I see a lot of teachers when they're marking my essays, they say, oh, there's a lack of sophistication. But whenever they say that, I always tend to think, oh, they're looking at vocabulary, that my vocabulary is not as sophisticated. Is there any way to achieve sophistication within an essay without using all these complex words, instead maybe using form or style just to get that sophistication, but not necessarily with vocabulary, because my vocabulary is not that good.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, another great question. Two really good questions to start. So we're off to the races here. Basically, I think I've got a good answer for you here. It's not about vocabulary. You're right. A lot of people, this was kind of like a year 11 thing for me even, is a lot of people got obsessed with the idea of using big words because they thought that that would elevate the sophistication, right? And in some way, having a broader vocabulary is useful. It doesn't mean you'll use it effectively, but it's useful typically because it allows you to express your ideas in fewer words, which means that you're more concise, which means that you're able to get your point across in less words and be more effective in that way, right? That's often more persuasive. You're not ranting, you're not rambling, you're straight to the point. Having a larger vocabulary often allows you to do that because there are words that there is a single word that will replace a whole sentence, right? If you know that word. However, you don't need to have a big vocabulary to be more sophisticated. One way you can be more sophisticated is kind of what I'm saying. Even if it's not a bigger vocabulary, try and reduce the length of each sentence, right? Try and reduce the amount of clauses that you use. And a clause is something that's separated by something like a comma or a semicolon. So look to have shorter sentences that actually just focus on a singular point rather than having more rambly sentences that have a lot of commas and that tend to be clunky. Okay, so refine your sentences, but here's the second element, which is even more important. And this is the real key, right? If you're not being sophisticated, in my eyes, the first thing that came to mind is if I was to read one of those sentences that the teacher said wasn't sophisticated, I would be thinking you weren't specific enough. That's not to do with your vocabulary. That's to do with you not giving me a specific insight, which meant it seems contradictory to what I just said because I was saying shorten your sentence, which you would think, oh, I've got to be less specific. It's like, no, that's its own art of trying to, reduce the amount of words. But when you are using those words to convey your point, make sure that you're not using generic or vague terms like theme, idea, even specific themes you could say that aren't specific enough, like power, love, conflict, like we had before. If you're just saying words like that, and I've actually got a really good example in the slides, and I'll make sure I'll pull that up in advance for you. But if you're just saying that, Shakespeare explores love, that isn't actually a theme. That actually isn't an idea. That is just a word that doesn't mean anything. It's not sophisticated. It's sophisticated if you tell me what type of love or what type of power, and if you tell me something about it, right? So do you see where I'm getting at there? You actually need to convey an idea, which should be a phrase rather than a word. So if you start focusing on writing phrases, which is multiple words, of course, to convey the same thing, rather than just that one generic word, then you're going to be a lot more sophisticated.